Welcome to Books to Better Your Life. I'm so glad you're here. In this podcast, you'll find practical tips, quick recaps, and doable challenges inspired by some of the most impactful personal development books. You'll also get a behind-the-scenes look through author interviews, discovering the journeys and insights that shaped their work. I'm Anne Brinkman, a habit and mindset coach who loves helping people find the tools that fit them and to get them started on the life they want. Ready to dive in? Today's guest is Sam Kabert. He's the author of Overcome the Overwhelm, as well as Soul-Life Balance, to name just two of his books. Sam is an emotional fitness trainer focused on the future of work by helping leaders regulate pressure and perform with clarity under sustained demand. Grounded in neuroscience and the 90-second rule, his work reframes emotional regulation as a trainable leadership capability rather than a mental health issue. A former Silicon Valley entrepreneur, 40 Under 40 honoree, and 3 times best-selling author, Sam equips leaders and organizations to build emotional fitness as core infrastructure for resilience, culture, and decision-making at scale. Hi, Sam. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Anne, thanks for having me. I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. Today we're talking about your book, Overcome the Overwhelm, the six-step breath process to access inner peace. And this is coincidentally also your 6th book, is that right?
Yeah, that's funny, right?
Yeah. Who did you write this book for?
I wrote it for the version of myself that needed it. I mean, honestly, I was going through one of the hardest times of my life, and I didn't talk about in the book, as you read. Like, one of the things I mentioned was like I was still processing everything going on. So, with respect to the other parties involved, it was like none of that's important. What's important is the action steps to get out of it. So, yeah, back in 2023, the one now I'm publicly talking about it, so it's all good. But the woman I was seeing at the time, I was like looking for rings, all the type of things, and her daughter was starting to call me daddy. I was like, hey, when mama and I get married, like we'll have a daddy-daughter ceremony. It was really cute. So long story short, the woman I was seeing, she got pregnant, and then she kind of had like a trauma response and bounced and blocked me. And fast forward the next 8 months, I think it was, of pregnancy plus 15 months of my son being born. I didn't meet him till he was 15 months old. So in those 2 years, give or take, I had a lot of work that I was doing to really be like, how is this happening? And I was studying Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I've been a longtime fan of Dr. Joe, and I was getting into NLP at the time. I was really into the unconscious mind. I had already had a background in breath work and nervous system regulation. And I found Dr. Joe's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, like a scavenger hunt. Like, it was super helpful, but at the same time, like, it was all over the place. And I was like, why can't there just be a blueprint for this? And I started synchronistically meeting people in my life that were doing this kind of work in terms of the reprogramming the subconscious mind. I was just learning more and more about it. So I brought in a couple of facilitators into like my spiritual group, my mastermind I was leading, and things like that. And I just took a little bit from here, a little bit from there. And then I developed the breath method that the book's about. And I really wrote the book to be like a blueprint, a roadmap that someone could use when they're in the thick of it, when they're having that earth-shattering experience or dark night of the soul, whatever you want to call it. That's who I wrote it for.
Wow. Yeah, so it sounds like really first it was for yourself and part of your own healing through that. What sounds like the ground being pulled out from underneath you.
Yeah, you'll appreciate this story. And I might have mentioned in our prep call, I totally forgot until just this moment. And it's a good thing to bring up. But you mentioned how you just got back from an international trip. At the time of before writing this book, a few months before, I was in Bali for a month, and I was doing the Pennebaker protocol, expressive writing. Are you familiar with that?
Just from what I read in your book about it.
Okay, yeah, cool. So the Pennebaker protocol is essentially for anyone listening, where you write about a traumatic event 3 days in a row, and you don't pick up where you left off. Each day you start again from the beginning. And I had done that a couple of times in my life, and it had been impactful. But when I was out in Bali, Dr. Andrew Huberman had just released a podcast talking about the Pennebaker protocol. And I was like, you know what? This seems like a good time to revisit this. So I was doing that. And then when I came home from the trip, I live in Santa Cruz, California. I started to watch a masterclass with who was it? Oh, I don't even remember the author who it was actually, but to your point, I've written 5 books and all of those have been nonfiction. I've never written a fiction book, and I was feeling called to take that expressive writing or the Pennebaker protocol to the next level of alchemizing it into writing my first fiction book, really for myself, not so much to share with the world. And, I had these dreams of one day sharing it with my son, just so he could see. And I was watching a master class on how to write a fiction book because I wasn't familiar with it. And within 2 or 3 weeks of writing it, all of a sudden I put that down, and Overcome the Overwhelm was what wanted to be birthed and come through. So I in some ways, resort back to my familiar territory of writing nonfiction. Yeah,
That's a cool transition, and I bet that nonfiction book is, or that fiction book is going to come back to fruition sometime, huh?
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Joe Dispenza because I remember he has those audio portions that go with the book, and I remember clearly sitting on the BART, our local transit to trips to San Francisco really early in the morning and listening along the way. So
Yeah.
that's uh, that's my connection with that book.
Yeah. Dr. Joe's great.
Yeah. And I'm curious, with your background as serial entrepreneur, earning that recognition of Silicon Valley's 40 under 40, I bet a lot of people are surprised to see now you have this shift into mental health, breathing, and I wonder how often that catches people off guard to find out this whole spiritual and mental health focused side of you.
It's interesting. I'm pretty esoteric, and I do feel that the world is going through a collective upgrade in consciousness or awakening, if you will. I've been back involved in the Silicon Valley business area for about 6, 8 months after a 6 year hiatus. So I used to live out there, and then I moved to Santa Cruz. But yeah, a bunch of people were like, "Hey, we all just thought we lost you," And I was like, "Oh, because I wasn't hearing anything." So yeah, when I started to get run back in the same circles that I was in like 6 years previous, there was some of that. And when I first made the transition from like businessman to spiritual man, there was some of that as well. But I really think of it like this: the shoe brand Tom's shoes.
Hmm.
Everyone knows Tom's, right? Blake Mycoskie, he wrote a book called Start Something That Matters in 2011, and it was the same year I started my business, and it was a huge inspiration to me. He always has been. And then he just kind of faded away. I didn't really think about him too much more. A few years ago, I heard him on a podcast where he was talking about after he had sold Tom's, after he had made $300 million, and he started a global impact movement of a one-for-one model that other businesses were adopting. He was going through a numbing depression so bad that he was experiencing suicidal ideation. Now, I'm super happy to report he's on the other side of that here 2 years later. And recently, in the past 4 months or so, he's been very outspoken on social media, providing mental health tips and things like that. And I resonate with his story so much that I share it in my keynotes often, because there is a certain archetype of person that gets into spirituality or doing the work because they have been chasing success, and then they finally get there and realize it was never about the end destination, and all that workaholism was to avoid the inner feeling of not feeling worthy enough. And that's the archetype that I feel I represent. That's the archetype I feel that Blake represents. And there's so many stories, I mean, of influencers, of famous people who have like won the Super Bowl or won the Oscar or won the fight, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden they're like, who am I without all this recognition? I can't just keep chasing the dopamine. And then that's when they get into mindfulness, mental health, and of course, spirituality.
Yeah, sort of like it's the next step of reaching your goals and finding out they're not as fulfilling as you had anticipated.
100%. I mean, I'm very into the unconscious mind, and I was operating on a code of when I achieve ABC, I will feel XYZ. So always focused on the end destination. And many people can relate to that.
There is that absolutely that focus on the next thing, be that promotion or dollar milestone. Absolutely. And to me that kind of ties in with the the idea of overcome the overwhelm and this focus these days on or the prevalence I should say of burnout. And I wonder what do you think is really driving the burnout stress these days?
100%. It's avoidance. What I teach and talk about and train now, I train leaders in emotional fitness. And emotional fitness is the next wave of mental health. It's about feeling first so that our thoughts naturally clear so that we can lead with strength and confidence. Here's what happens. Neuroscience has something called the 90-second rule. And that teaches anytime we have a thought, that sends a signal to the body, which creates a feeling. Now, because most people are disconnected from their feelings, they don't actually allow themselves to experience the emotion. So rather than the emotion moving through the body and the thoughts clear naturally in 90 seconds, the feeling gets sent back up to the mind, and then we start to ruminate in negative thought loops. So mainstream society says, oh, we have a mental health crisis because so many of us are stuck in our heads, whether it's stress, anxiety, depression, any of these things, it's physiological. It's in the body. So we have to reconnect with our feelings. And it's been so taboo to talk about our feelings, yet every single decision we make in our life is based off of how we feel. I mean, we're both in Silicon Valley. There's a big movement of sports these days in Silicon Valley in 2026 because we had the Super Bowl and we're also having the FIFA World Cup. There's a big talk about sports. Why are people fans of sports teams? Because it helps them feel something, right? When their team wins, they feel happy. When their team loses, they feel sad. Why do we watch a movie? To get inspired. Why? Well, how do we choose what we're going to eat? It's based off of how we feel. We make decisions based off of how we feel. Then with logic afterwards, we justify it with logic afterwards. So when we reconnect, knowing it's safe to feel, that's when we start to learn about the nervous system, about breath work, how we can actually apply the 90-second rule and move through things in real time. Now, that's one part. I'm just going to wrap this up real quick. The other part is allostatic load. Allostatic load is the scientific term for emotional baggage. When we don't allow ourselves to feel something and that 90-second cycle is incomplete, then that creates allostatic load because we've compartmentalized it. All that accumulation of a allostatic load, that emotional baggage, is what accumulates and leads to chronic stress and dis-ease and eventually burnout that can be so bad where I've worked with professionals where they are literally just walking around the office and then they just passed out and fell on their face and have had bruises on their face from burnout. They don't even call it burnout because they're like, it's so much more severe than how people just commonly refer to, oh, I'm feeling burned out because I've been drained for a while now.
So much in what you just said there, and that idea of overwhelm. I hear it's not just that feeling of overwhelm, but all of the feelings that are kind of bottled up and pushed aside. Is that how you would say it, or what do you think is really part of that overwhelm?
Well, it's because we're not allowing ourselves to feel. And that creates the allostatic load. Like that's what the science is saying. I'm not saying it. The science is saying that. That's like to quote Dr. Joe. That's like something he would say. I'm not saying it. The science is saying that, right? The
Uh-huh.
emotional baggage is the allostatic load, and that's because we're not allowing ourselves to feel.
Yeah. And I think that our society has really had that history of not feeling. And I wonder, what do you think makes it so crucial now versus if I think about the history of the US, for instance, and my parents and their parents, and kind of that diminishing of feelings in general. What do you think makes it so topical now?
There's been a movement of empowerment, right? Like it used to be like don't express the feelings, be seen, not heard, all of those things. Then it was like, rights and all the different, every little, not little, in every aspect in any cultural community activism of proclaiming your rights and empowerment and sovereignty. So it's been more socially acceptable as of late to like say, raise your hand, be like, hey, I'm struggling with my thoughts, and that's okay. And I'm not afraid to admit that. The next wave is raising your hands and saying, I'm struggling with my feelings. Right now, we've gone huge to just being like, oh, wow, it's okay to be vulnerable with like, my thoughts are disturbing. My thoughts are uncomfortable. I'm stuck in negative feedback loops. The wave that's coming is raising our hand, being like, I'm struggling with my feelings.
Yeah, that's a big moment for us, I think. You mentioned, I think you called it upgrade in
Mhm.
consciousness. And the one of the solutions you offer in your book is around this idea of breath work. And I wonder for people who don't really know what that means or may think it sounds woo-woo, how would you describe breath work?
Yeah, so we're taking 20 to 25,000 breaths a day. And for most people, all of those breaths are happening unconsciously, meaning they're not taking one single deep breath intentionally on their own because the breath is the only, and this is science, the breath is the only bodily function that happens both consciously and unconsciously. Said
Mhm.
another way, the breath is the one thing you can do in terms of a bodily function intentionally and take control. And that also happens just on autopilot. So most people have disconnected breath. James Nestor wrote an amazing book called Breath. It was a New York Times bestseller and just took off like wildfire probably about 4 years ago, or give or take around the time of this recording. And one of the things that became so popular as a result of his book was mouth tape. People going to sleep and putting tape on their mouths to retrain their nervous system to breathe through their nose. Because what the data shows is if we breathe through our mouth, that's going to contribute to a fight or flight or survival state. Nasal breathing will get you into rest and digest. So that's actually become pretty mainstream. People might not know the origins of it, but that's a little bit of the origins. And this is all science. The other thing is, since most of our breaths are happening unconsciously, we are constantly holding our breath, or we have what's called shallow breath or choppy breath. And all of that is contributing to a state of survival. I teach people what I call the ninja breath. And the ninja breath is just a subtle inhale through the nose, all the way up at the top of the breath, through the nose, sip in a bit more, and then just a subtle exhale through the nose. It's best to use when you're in conversation with someone else because so often, like I'm a podcaster too, right? Like a lot of times when I'm hosting a podcast, I'm trying my best to do active listening and be present with my guests, but I also have all these thoughts being like, oh, he just or she just said whatever. I want to guide the conversation this way. So as soon as I've noticed those thoughts, I'll come back to the ninja breath being like, okay, let me settle in. Now I'm more present with the other person. That also works for triggering conversations, right? Where you're getting a little heated and you're starting to regulate your nervous system because when you're doing the ninja breath, you're literally regulating your nervous system in real time, and the other person can't even tell that you're breathing. And the best part about the ninja breath is the more you practice it on a daily basis when you're in conversation with someone else, you're retraining your nervous system to breathe this way automatically. So instead of having that choppy, shallow, disconnected breath that leads to a state of survival, your nervous system is being like, oh, wow, this is the way we're breathing now. And then your nervous system says, oh, it doesn't clearly, obviously say it, but your nervous system is like, wow, this feels so much better. So then your nervous system adopts that as new behavior because previously in our life, something happened, right? It could be like childhood when we got in trouble for something. And then all of a sudden we're like, ooh, or maybe a kid crying or having a tantrum, and you've been told like you're making a scene, so and all of a sudden we shut down and we're like it's not safe to feel. So now we're reacquainting ourselves with the emotional body, the limbic system, and the nervous system is saying, hey, it is safe to feel, and it's actually likes this, and it's going to do more of it.
Well, I have to acknowledge that I'm really paying attention to my breath as you're saying that right now. What's going on with my breath? Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that not only is this process useful in the moment, but it's helpful overall to train our brains, bodies to be doing that more soothing breathing in general and lowering shifting more to that rest and digest mode rather than the fight or flight mode in general.
100%. That's it.
I think these days some people really are living in that mode of
Survival.
fight or
Mhm.
flight, yeah, and their nervous systems are in that dysregulated place. Would you say that this process is a path for them to recover their normal nervous system functioning, or
Yeah,
is it part of a larger thing? What would you
yeah,
say?
that's who it's built for, straight up. I have a free community called Breath Club. We actually have just over 800 people in the community. And and it's free. I've had so many people come with crippling anxiety, just like debilitating anxiety, where it's to the point of like panic attacks. And they'll come time and time again. Like people come in waves, like they might come and be breathing with us for like a 3 month period, and then they just kind of disappear. And I'm hearing from them all the time being like, hey, this is helping so much. My anxiety is just gone. I no longer have that anxiety. And this is about treating the root as opposed to the symptom, because too many breathwork practitioners, and I mean just people in general, focus on the symptoms. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. You know that arcade game whack-a-mole? The mole pops up and then you bang it and you're like, go home, mole, right? And then the next one pops up and you're like, bang it, right? So that's how we treat stress, anxiety, overwhelm, all these things. It's like, I can't deal with this right now. I just need something that helps right now in the moment. And then it comes back again. And then it comes back again. Everything I do is rooted in shadow work. And that's a term coined by Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist. And it's just to make the unconscious conscious. So to become aware of what you previously weren't aware of. 95% of our awareness we're not aware of. It lies in our unconscious, and that's associated to the body. The conscious mind is associated to the mind. So when we do the breath method specifically, these 6 steps, which you can do in 2 minutes, we're allowing ourselves to feel those heavy, dense emotions. I have a group called Reset Collective where I certify folks in NLP, breath work, and emotional fitness. And we actually had our weekly call today, and someone mentioned, like, hey, I saw on an Instagram, not yours, but I saw on Instagram, someone was recommending when you're breathing to say, I am safe, and all these positive affirmations. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to be careful that that's not avoidance, because how we use the breath method is in 3 themes, because 6 steps is a lot to remember. 3 simple themes: breathe, feel, think intentionally. On the first and the third step, we're grounding. That's a great time to just like say those positive affirmations like, I am safe to feel, or I am fully capable, I am confident, I am worthy, whatever it is, right? But that middle theme of feel, that's where the shadow work is. That's where we have to get outside of our comfort zone to bring the unconscious to conscious awareness, to accept and to surrender to it, so that we earn the right to transform it into something more empowering. And that's how you get to the root.
When I hear you talking about shadow work, it's not necessarily dealing with your devils. It's more of acknowledging what's physically going on for you. Is that how you would say it? Or is there more another level that can be
Yeah,
there?
it's a great way to put it. I humans and our egos, right? When I say ego, it's just like our personality, it's just our identification of self, it's our characteristics, our traits. And we love to get caught up in good and bad, right and wrong, happy and sad, and all of that. People think of shadow work as like this scary thing, like it's the shadow, and like it's heavy and it's dense. And the reticular activating system in the brain is a matchmaking system, it's a filtration system. So if we think of things like that, then we're going to attract more of it. Whereas how I think of shadow work is exactly how Carl Jung coined the term: to make the unconscious conscious. It's not happy or sad. It's not positive or negative. It's not good or bad. Humans are just adding our artistic flair onto it, being like, oh, this has to be heavy and dense. I remember when I got in first into healing, my path was with plant and earth medicines, very deep. And I was a part of a lot of communities where everything was heavy and it was dense. And that was kind of like the energy that I brought to it. When I went to my first NLP, neuro linguistic training program, the instructors brought such a lightness to it. And I remember feeling at first like, they don't have reverence for this. Like why is this so light? And then all of a sudden it clicked with me. I was like, when did I make the decision that healing work or any of this type of work had to be heavy and dense? And then I noticed when I graduated from that, started facilitating with clients, all of a sudden I had a lightness I didn't have before because I totally got rid of that old unconscious behavior of approaching this like it had to be heavy and dense.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up a really good point because probably a lot of people don't even embark on that healing journey because of that fear of I have to go through a lot of pain and horrible things. And I think you're suggesting it doesn't always need to be like that.
It doesn't ever need to be like that. Beliefs. This gets us into beliefs. When I got into belief work, one of my favorite DMs was from this person I was working with on and off. And she goes, I don't have any limiting beliefs. And I was just thinking to myself, well, aren't you Miss Perfect? Because the truth is, we all have limiting beliefs. Beliefs are just decisions. I can have a conversation with someone and within 5 minutes identify at least one or two limiting beliefs, right? And that is a limiting decision right there to be like the point we're talking about, like shadow work. Oh, I don't want to do that thing, I don't want to do healing work because that's uncomfortable or because that's heavy, or I don't want to go back into the past and reliving that stuff. Those are all beliefs and decisions. Who's saying that? The person saying that is saying that the brain hears that and filters for more of that reality. Whereas on the other hand, can we approach this like, okay, I want to be the best version of myself, and I am willing to get uncomfortable to earn the right to go to get on the other side. It's the classic hero's journey model. Every single story, every single myth, every single movie, every single fiction book, all of them include the hero's journey model from Joseph Campbell. The hero goes and does the shadow work in the middle of that journey so that he can come back home and bring the medicine back to the people. He can alchemize it and make change, but we have to go into the depths first.
Well, then when I hear you say depths, I'm thinking, oh, that sounds rough. That sounds really like a painful place that a lot of people don't want to go.
And that's an association. That's a neural association,
Hmm.
right? Because
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
respect that, and you're right. Because there's this fun exercise we do in NLP with like a room full of 40 people, and the point is we all have different neural associations for words. And what we'll do is we'll take a word as simple as like sex. SEX, sex. And we'll say, all right, everyone write down 5 words that you think of when you hear the word sex. Then we play a game of inviting people to raise their hand and say their 5 words. Then people raise their hands when they have a matching word. Never, never does anyone have all 5 words be the same. And the point is, we have different neural associations, and that's the opportunity to reframe. Reframing, just going on a tangent here, but reframing is something we've all heard of, but we might not necessarily understand the origin. The origin of a reframe is a picture with a frame around it. The picture represents, in this case, the word, or it could be the experience, the event. That is what it is. It's not good or bad. It just is. The frame around it is the meaning we give the picture or the word in this case. When we say reframe, it's not changing the picture. It's removing the old frame and putting a new frame on it so that the picture has new meaning.
Hmm. That's funny because I haven't heard it described like that, but that makes a lot of sense. Of course, that's makes a lot of sense when you say it like that. I think with those neural associations that you're bringing up, there's lots of opportunities for people to not think that this might be helpful for them. And I wonder, especially with probably a lot of the audience that you try to reach, that you might get pushback of people like, oh, breath work, I don't, this isn't for me. And I wonder what are the most common things that come up for you that people don't think it's relevant for them.
I love that question because that was something very prevalent. And now hearing you ask that question, I'm like, yeah, in the past 4, 6 months, it's been almost like a magnet. People are just being drawn to it. I don't
Mhm.
necessarily hear these days objections, right? But in the past, I would hear objections more. And when I do hear objections these days, it would be more everything we've been discussing. Like, yeah, I don't want to do that. It's not so much that's woo, it's more like, yeah, I just rather not, and it's those type of things where you can feel the energetic walls and you can also feel that someone is afraid to feel. And that's totally okay. Like, I mean, I'm not sitting here saying that this is for everyone. Like, I firmly believe it is for everyone, but that doesn't mean I'm going to push it on everyone, be like, I have an answer that's working for me. And there's a lot of data and science out there that shows that it's working. And anecdotally, my method has transformed a lot of lives. But if you don't want to do that work, that's cool. Like one of my best friends and my parents, who I'm super close to, they're not into this stuff at all. But it doesn't mean we're butting heads. One of the presuppositions of NLP, neuro linguistic programming, is respect other people's model of the world. And the more I can respect someone else's model of the world, the more they respect mine. Because energetically, when I'm trying to shift and change and convince someone's model of the world, that's almost like if we were together right now in person and you were to put your palm up and I were to just put my palm against your palm, you would probably push back. You wouldn't let me push my palm into you
Hmm.
because resistance gets met with resistance, right? That's where the friction is.
To me, that reminds of that coaching philosophy of we're not here to give advice. We're here to help you find your own advice, your own answers.
100%.
And I wonder, as you said that, hey, I haven't been getting that resistance lately. I wonder if you had to guess, if is that kind of your messaging is clear and you're connecting more to the people who are ready to hear your message, or are we just in that place where more people are recognizing the need for this?
There's a great prophecy by the Hopi people from parts of Arizona and Mexico. And there are these hieroglyphs on a wall. And it shows two paths that humanity goes down. One is the path of being disconnected from your body to literally not know thyself. And that's what we're seeing in screens and distractions of reality, the news, all these things, avoidance, right? And the other path is being fully connected to your body with bountiful fruits and harvests and just like prosperity. And this is going to sound super cheesy and kind of funny, but the movie Barbie, have you seen the movie Barbie?
Uh-huh.
One of my favorite movies. I mean, such a deep spiritual movie, right?
I hadn't thought of it as spiritual, but definitely deep.
It's one
But
of the
yeah,
most
tell me more.
spiritual movies I've ever seen. In my opinion, it shows quantum physics, it shows the Matrix, it shows the conditioning and programming of society, how the FBI is in cahoots with film. There's that one scene, all of these stuff. But specifically in Barbie, the Barbie movie, the main character, Margot Robbie, she chooses to hear the call to adventure, the hero's journey, to go into the depths and not succumb to toxic positivity. She embraces authentic positivity. Instead of acting like everything is fine, she's like, do you guys ever think about death? Or like, not acting like her
Hmm.
heel isn't up, her heel is down, or the whatever, all those different things where she was quote unquote malfunctioning. So she goes down the path of the Hopi prophecy of bounty, of fruit, of being fully connected and abundance. In order to get there, she had to do her shadow work first. Meanwhile, Ken is going down the path of greed, of materialism, of consumerism, of being disconnected from himself and disassociated. And then by the end of the movie, Ken finally comes back and joins the same path as Barbie to do the shadow work and to realign and to re-meet himself, to have a rebirth of Ken is me, right? All of that at the end, like literally that movie perfectly shows the Hopi prophecy that I was just mentioning a moment ago. And that's exactly where I feel we're at in our split right now. Currently, March 2026, we got a war going on. We got so much other stuff going on. And amidst that, the Epstein files, all of this stuff, a lot of noise. Aliens, the government saying aliens are actually real, like all this stuff, right? So many people just getting caught up in fear and doom and mongering and all of that and literally worrying about stuff outside themselves. That's the path of Ken in the movie initially. The other side are the people that are ready for this message, the people that are ready to go beyond personal development and into spiritual or soul development. And that's really what this work is about.
Yeah, thanks for putting it that way. I need to go rewatch that movie now and look at it in that lens of shadow work and um, paths that we choose. Thanks for sharing it like that. I love how your book, like the process that you describe in your book is simple, like the 6 steps, and yet you really expand on it. If someone only takes one thing away from this book, what would you want it to be?
Oh, I love that. I say it all the time. I literally say this like in my keynotes. Like, if you're going to write one thing down, let it be this: the 90-second rule. Your unconscious mind will remember that the 90-second rule means you can move through heavy, dense emotions in less than 90 seconds. And next to that, right, breathe, feel, think, because that's what you do in those 90 seconds. Those are the 3 themes of the breath method. Breathe to start to ground, connect with your breath. It's going to shift you into rest and digest. Feel, that's the stage of the shadow work. If emotions are energy in motion, which they are, that's what the 90-second rule teaches. What is this energy revealing to me? That's the shadow work. And then the third and final step, think, and that's just the reframe. That's earning the right to invoke the power of authentic positivity. Something like, what is one positive thing that I know to be true about myself? So taking a 90-second pause to run through, breathe, feel, think.
Beautiful. And I know we're talking about this idea and part of that Overcome the Overwhelm book. But is this the entry point book you would say for people, or since you've written 6,
Hmm.
is this as good as any to start with, or do you have any starting points?
Yeah, I mean, my first 3 books were pre-spiritual awakening. They're like, business books. Number
Hmm.
4 is my baby. That's my favorite. I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but that's my favorite. It's Soul
Hmm.
Life Balance, a guide to igniting and integrating spiritual awakening. That book is beyond deep. It's very profound. It's very beyond its years because it's a recollection or accumulation of wisdom from other spiritual teachers that helped me to integrate my spiritual awakening. And there's so many resources. I might cite easily like 30 teachers in that book in terms of like, hey, if you're into this topic in your spiritual awakening, go see this person's material. So it's not saying I have the answers. Here are the things that have helped me, and I've seen help the communities that I'm in as well. Because a lot of times when people go through that spiritual awakening, it's a feeling of a rebirth. There's someone I've been working with recently that's in his 60s and former military, and he's like a newborn baby, experiencing life for the first time. So, yeah, that one's close to my heart. But Overcome the Overwhelm is definitely the one that I would say is like the entry level one for sure. Like, this is
Hmm.
a good
Hmm.
introduction to like this kind of work that has a lot of data, a lot of science, and it can meet people where they're at. Because when I wrote Soul Life Balance, I wasn't thinking about like a corporate audience or anything like that, right? But the next thing I was like, man, I really want to get into speaking. So corporate audience, that book didn't work for that. So I literally wrote Overcome the Overwhelm for an audience to meet them where they're at, no matter where they're at.
Nice. Well, and I want to emphasize too that the size of the book feels very accessible. Like it's not like a really dense book, and yet you're still referencing a lot of resources within there if people want to refer to more.
Dang.
Yeah, and I wonder for our listeners, it sounds like you have a couple communities that people can join, the Breathwork community, the Reset Collective. Where should people go to find out about you? Or are there any offerings that you think are important for people to know about as we're talking?
Yeah, and also thank you. All social medias, my name's Sam Kabert. That's the handle. So whether you're TikTok, YouTube Short, or Facebook, LinkedIn, all the things, Instagram, that's where I'm at. I post 3 videos a day usually, short form content. My website, you can find more. But if you're ready to take the next step, Breath Club, that's free. That's the community I mentioned where you can literally learn breath work, and I guide people in 30-minute sessions once a week as well. And if you're hearing this and being like, yeah, I want to take this to next level, or you're a therapist, a coach, or someone in business and HR, just want to incorporate this into your company, that's Reset Collective. That's the certification program.
Awesome. Lots of different options for people to learn more and get to healing. So thanks so much, Sam. I've really appreciated this opportunity to talk with you, and I know that these ideas are going to be really valuable, and I hope they get to the people that they're going to best serve.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anne. I appreciate the invitation and come on your show and love the work you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for listening to Books to Better Your Life. If you could use some support on your own personal growth journey, please reach out. I'm an ICF certified life coach, and I help my clients with habits, mindset, confidence, and making what they want happen. I'm Anne Brinkman, and you can find me at www.betteryour.life. That's .life, not .com. Choose the contact option to send me a message and schedule a chat.